Uh, Speaking out of my turn, actually, madam, I would like to ask you. You just shared an experience where you had to head a team. As a very young girl, you had to head a team outside India. How was? Can you share any such similar experiences when you headed a team back in India? What was the change you noticed? The perception of the people.
See, one is there's not much of a difference that I noticed between the two countries or the cultures in terms of heading a team. Only thing I found is in terms of getting work done was a lot easier in the US or UK than in India. It was a little more difficult for me to get the job done here because, as I said, personality plays a big issue here. So having to work with people to make sure that they get into a process-driven culture was very difficult. To give you an example, if I have to get something done in the US, it would be quicker and I would know the answers much quicker. Here, data collection itself would take a very long time because the data would not be available, and our knowledge to be pragmatic about the data is also a bit of an issue. So we normally tend to make biased decisions based on the data also. So the neutrality of the data is also difficult. And you can see, I wouldn't say it's about only countries. I don't want to make sure that I just don't want to communicate it's only about countries. It is about the way we work. I mean, for example, you just look at all the TVs that are going on, TV channels which go on in India. You can see that complete different standpoints. The neutrality wouldn't be there. You would have one person completely supporting and the other person completely saying the complete opposite of it, right? And you notice the same thing in the US also now. But I think as a human race, we are all trying to become more and more bipartisan in our thought process and not becoming more neutral about our thought process and looking at the data more pragmatically and seeing what is going to be beneficial. Instead of that, we tend to make biased decisions. And decisions is something, when you make biased decisions, especially in an organization, what tends to happen is that you go on the wrong path and then you have to retrace the path back and come back. So the delays happen in the system. So that was the only difference I found. But other than that, it was the same. It was like in every company, leadership is a trait one needs to have, whichever country you are or whichever place or job you are. Leadership traits is something that needs to happen. So yeah, so they are the same. For example, if you're in a particular job, it's very important that you communicate more. And when you are in leadership positions, the more you communicate, the better your chances of being heard, being understood, and the translation of what you're saying to the other person, absorbing it, happens better when you communicate more, when you over communicate. When you just communicate only once, many times the absorption is very different. For example, if I say it's raining outside, it's just one word. But when I say raining outside, what happens in your mind is, oh my God, I have clothes out, I have to take care of it. Another person, oh my God, I can draw something. So each person has a different mindset when the statement is made. And each one makes their own decisions based on their experience, their mindset, and this is human nature. So when this happens, in an organization also this will happen. You would make a statement, but the way they would perceive would be very different. So when you keep making it again and again and again. So when you, instead of just saying it's raining and you're expecting someone to go and take care of all the parts which are running in the rain and then taking it inside, you've not communicated enough, right? So the second time you realize the parts are still in the rain, so you communicate again and say, hey, parts are in the rain, move it in. Then okay, now you've communicated, move it in, and each person will make a decision on where it is to be moved. Okay, so each one comes with their own thought process of where it is to be moved. So then you communicate again and say, oh, move it to this particular place. Then you get better at it. And so when you communicate, every time you communicate, the more you communicate, the better it is. And sometimes with just one communication, people get the point because you're in sync in the thought process. The culture within the organization is clear. When it rains, everybody thinks, okay, move the part from there to here. That's an automatic thought process. Over the years, it's been done. So that becomes the thought process. So then you don't have to over communicate, but initially you need to communicate to bring in the culture and to make sure that everybody has the same understanding. And that's one of the very important leadership trait. The other leadership trait, I think, which I think needed to happen in both the places was to make sure you make people successful, whether you are here in India or you're in US or any place. It's very important because as humans, every one of us is going to be successful. When you walk into the gate of any company, everybody walks in through that gate saying that I want to do a fantastic job. Nobody walks in saying that I want to do a bad job today. Everybody walks in to say that I want to do a good job. But when they go back, not everybody has the same feeling, I did a good job today. Some have a feeling that you've done a good job. Some don't have the feeling that I've done a good job. So that obviously means something within the culture of the organization or the processes within the organization or the people within the organization are not enabling people to do it. So you need to work on people, you need to work on processes to make sure that every individual who comes into the organization feels that they've done a good job and they go. And when you get an organization with that kind of attitude, then that organization has no choice but to only be successful.
Do you think culture is a function of the leader predominantly? Meaning, if I ask you, the culture in your company is different from another company in the same group because of leaders, that is you vis-a-vis somebody else. Would you consider that?
Partly yes, partly no. Mm-hmm. Yes, because any culture gets formed out of two things. One is attitude and another one is process. So the process is the way we do things. The way we do things creates an attitude, and the way we think creates the different process. So this is a virtuous cycle which keeps going. And that's what builds the organization's culture. So when a leader comes in, the leader has a choice to change the process and also change the attitude. So when the leader comes in, you can make a difference. But both are very long term. For example, the company I am in right now has got certain culture, which is good because of the processes that have been developed over a period of time, which as a leader, I think I should not be touching them because they're good. They will continue. So there are certain others which I'm trying to change. So that will metamorph into an existing culture becoming a particular flower. And let's say that is a Bogan. Then I was in another company. It had certain processes and culture, which was good. So you only tweak things as a leader, you tweak things that need to change a bit. So with that, if that initial culture itself was probably a rose, then you would get a different variety of a rose only, and not you will not get a bougainvillea. So it takes a long time if you want to change it like this completely. So it can be done, and I've seen some leaders change a rose into a bougainvillea and a bougainvillea to a rose. I've seen leaders do that too, but some of them have had lasting impressions. Some of them have been successful. Some of them have been taking the wrong side. So the risks with that kind of an approach is very high. So it depends on the leader, on what kind of a risk the leader wants to take to completely metamorph that. Anyway, if you try to change, it will be a mix of a rose and a bougainvillea only at any point. It's not like you can get a completely new rose. So it will be a mix.
But would you consider within this organization, one department is rose and one department is a bougainvillea?
Yes, yes, that also happens. And that is something I think leaders can change. Within departments, it is very much into the leader's hands to make all of them versions of a rose or versions of a bougainvillea. But to completely change the organizations is what I was trying to talk about, and the risk. But I think a leader has a very strong role to play within departments to have the same behaviors. And you will notice that you will not see a bougainvillea to a rose in any company. That kind of a difference will not be there. But you will have stronger, you can have a bud rose to a rose. So
got it. I understand. That's very interesting.
You have a variety. You have a variety in that. But it will not be completely different. It will not be apple and orange. It will be a mutated orange or a mutated apple or something like that, which can.
Madam, I wanted to ask you one thing. You said that there is difference in the behavior of employees or the work climate in US and in India. So do you feel that it is the difference in culture, organization culture? It is due to that this change is there? That
it is just not organizational culture alone. It is also society plays a strong role in that. The same company, like Mr. Tilagan was pointing out, the same company in the US worked very different. Same company in India. Of course, the cultures were still the same because the company makes sure the culture is the same. As I told you, processes and attitude. But the attitude is different here, right? In India when compared to the US. So that attitude will give you a different metamorphed, kind of a culture. So it will be a little different, but the base will be still the same in any company that you will see. And that's why you see, for example, you would have noticed, I recently read an article of how if you fail to innovate, the number of companies which have gone down because of their failure to innovate. And success actually does that to you. I mean, Kodak was a classical example. Xerox is a classical example of companies who saw so much success in what they did. And when you get to that position of a success, what happens is, as an organization, you're used to a particular culture, and you're just in that culture, and you fail to see what's happening outside because you have so much success. So you tend to negate that from happening.
But if you have to change the organization, you have to change the culture, isn't it? If you want to bring in change in the organization, do you think you have to tinker with the culture?
Yeah, see, true. If you have to change the organization, you have to change the culture. Otherwise, it's not going to. You're not going to see a difference, right? You have to grow. Any organization has to continuously grow. If the organization doesn't grow, it will fail to exist. So being aware of your environment is a culture that we need to build in any organization. And when you try to make that change in any organization, it's a difficult process. It's a very, very difficult process. So sometimes leaders from within that organization cannot bring in that change. Sometimes you really need to bring in a leader from somewhere outside to make that change. Because people within the organization are already used to a particular culture, so you will only get varied variety of the same culture.
Can you share? Yeah, go ahead, speak.
Yeah, so if you have to look at the current organization which I'm in right now, this organization at one point required a leader who came in from outside, who changed this organization completely to a different one. So the leader came in and changed the old ways of doing it, and had they taken a leader from within the organization, I don't think that change could have happened. So there was some grafting and other things that happened, and that's when something different comes out of it. So yeah, leaders do have a role to play, a strong role.
So during that time, was there so much of stress in the system because the change is painful all the time?
Yeah, change is always painful. So there was a lot of stress. You will, when such things happen in any organization, you will see a lot of people leaving the organization. Whenever you go for a completely different changed culture, you'll see a lot of loss of people, and that's okay, because that's what is required. It's like, I'm sorry, I'm taking an example of plants only today. So I will keep continuing the plant story. So it's like pruning the plants, you cut it out so that new shoots start coming out in a completely different
I got it.
A plant gets grafted or something new. So that is it. So when one is very clear on you are going to wanting to change your organization, and you need to culture of an organization, you should be aware that you will have a lot of obstacles, you will have a lot of people leaving the organization, and with that is then the new culture is going to happen. If the same people are there and the same things are there, then you will not see much of a difference.
Okay.
And this one person cannot make it happen also. Just one leader cannot make it happen.
The one person may have to bring in a lot of other people also.
Yeah, one person will bring in a lot of other people with their similar thought processes, and which is what you said. One department to the other department, if there is a difference. So if you bring in key people and then put them in those positions, then everything starts, processes start changing, and when processes start changing, attitude changes, and when attitude changes, process changes. It becomes into another culture.
Got it. Yes.
Madam, you were working as team leader in different countries, in different companies and different countries. What were the common conflicts that you could find in your team?
Everywhere, when you say conflicts, can you be a little more specific so that I can give my examples or my thought process, because it's a little too broad.
Were there any differences between your decision and what the team wanted, like that? Were there any interpersonal issues between the team members and you as a team leader?
Interpersonal issues existed in every organization, every company or every country I work with. Interpersonal is something that one needs to learn as a leader how to deal with it. So the best way I have found success in this is to put the company's goal in mind and driving towards that. So take people to the higher level of thought process. For example, people be talking about a 1 lakh and a 2 lakh, difference. Say he's the problem, they're the problem. Then when you say, hey, for a 1,000 crore company, 1 lakh doesn't matter. So whoever is right, just do it. then you bring people to a level playing ground and then say, okay, fine, we are there. Let's look at how to save 5 lakhs rather than fighting on this 1 lakh whether you did it or I did. So it's very important to bring the objective and the understanding better. Then these interpersonal skills go away. Interpersonal issues go away between two departments or between two people or anything. You'd be very surprised when there are interpersonal issues. Each one has their own ideas and they only think their idea is the right one, and the other person thinks that their idea is the right one. When you point out that both ideas, the objective is the same, suddenly you find some commonality happening, and when that commonality happening, when you see that, automatically a third solution emerges with the two people themselves, and then you get a solution, or the two departments. So it's very important as a leader to look at how to find that common ground. And when you find that common ground, you tend to see that you find solutions all finding level ground.
Yes, Damodaran, you go. You have to unmute.
Yes, ma'am. I'm interested to ask you questions on cultural aspect. As a leader, how do we ensure that the company has a shared culture?
What culture?
No, as a leader, how do you ensure that the company has a shared culture? The shared culture in the sense which is really liked by employees. From both sides, management and employees, both they really like to have that culture.
Isn't that the dream of every organization?
So is it happening? Is it happening really? Or the company wanted to have their own set of cultural aspects?
True. It happens in, I've been fortunate to be with two companies where the people within that company have always been so loyal, so liking of their particular company. This happened to me for both. I worked only so far in two companies, and both the companies I was lucky to have that. So basically, how you make sure that happens is to make sure that first, employees get compensated what they think is fair. Because everybody wants to do a good job for a fair share of the money that they want. Second, you make sure you hire the right people in the right place. And third, you set a common objective such that everybody feel connected to that common purpose that we are all there for. And fourth, if you're very fair and honest, normally people like to work for such an organization. You pay someone very unfairly, then whatever culture that you're trying to build, you're not going to get the same kind of commitment that you have. However fair you are, whatever you do, because the person doesn't feel that they're adding value or something like that. So all of them have to come together as a nice mixture for any, correct, for any organization to be very successful trying to do.
But why you hire? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you'll be quite surprised. The pay scales between the company I'm working right now and the company I worked before are completely different, are thoroughly different. But that's why I said, the employees feel that they're paid fairly. So it's just opinion. So one is, yes, you need to pay the market, of course, because people do understand if I work for an OE, I would definitely get paid more. And if I work for an auto component, industry, I get paid less. And if I work for a tier 2, I get paid even more less. People understand that intuitively, they do understand that. So they only compare within that realm only. So you don't have to be thinking that everybody has to pay like a Google for us to be successful. Not necessarily.
In that context, you should.
Context, correct. That's the right word. That's in that context. If you are being fair in their compensation, they are willing to put that extra effort.
But when you hire, how do you hire people with the right culture? Do you look for cultural fit at all? How do you do that, if so?
Yeah, when I hire, I look for only one thing, is the attitude. Because if the attitude of the person is good, then they normally fit to the culture. When I say attitude good, every company has a particular attitude they're looking for in that individual that suits their culture. Okay, so that attitude is different. For example, if tomorrow I have to apply for a job at Google, I don't even think I'll have a chance to get that job. So, okay, the reason because is not because I'm not competent, because I don't probably have the attitudes that they would expect someone in that kind of a leadership position to have. They probably want a very aggressive leader who would be like the type A kind of person. I'm not that type A kind of person, so I won't fit into that job. So each company has their own set of attitudes they look for, and if you fit into that, then you find a nice match and things work very well. If that doesn't happen, then there's a problem.
Can you give an example of the attitudes that you look for here?
One attitude that I look for is to make sure that they're very collaborative in their approach. Another attitude I look for is someone who's willing to learn all the time. And the third attitude I look for is the person having the ability to understand the connections between different incidents that's happening. For example, you're doing something, you understand the cause for it. Are you able to understand the cause for it? And are you able to see the connection between the cause and the effect? So that's something I personally keep looking for to see if they fit into that. So basically collaborativeness and someone who's got a learning ability, who's willing to work and learn. And the third one, a little bit, is one thing I look at is the person loyal, has got loyalty quotient is something I look at, because in the current company that I am in, we are a mid-sized company, a large company. So for us, it takes a lot of effort for us to train somebody, and we're very person dependent. If the person leaves away, any person who comes to an organization takes at least minimum 2 years to understand and start delivering. So if they don't stick for those 2 years and beyond, the amount of time we've spent on the person to bring them up to speed for the 2 years, they leave in the third year, we've not reaped the benefits. So I at least look if this person, will stay for about 5 years, so that, we can reap the benefits of the efforts that we've put into by the organization. So that's something I look, that's my personal requirement, but that's my thing.
So these attitudes, do they essentially reflect the values of the organization or even the group? Would you say that?
They very much, because our group's value is, we say whether we are a learning organization. So it's very, very important that we are a learning organization. We are an organization which is very ethical, and we want to make sure that we follow the ethics to its fullest values. So we make sure that people who enter our system are also having those attitudes. And we are also a company which talks about TQM a lot. So total quality management is about continual improvement. So, understanding where you are and, having that learning to make sure that you continuously keep improving and moving. It's not like they're looking for a step change or something like that. They're just looking for a progression that is to happen. So it kind of fits into our kind of culture.
Ma'am, this organizational change happens only by organizational change, or we can go for a new culture.
You can go for?
No. This my question is, when do we think of going for new cultural change? I mean, is it happening only by organizational change, or we can go for new culture?
See, culture is something one has to look at. If you want to really change the culture, there should be a purpose of why you should change the culture. Without a purpose, you shouldn't be changing the culture.
Yeah.
There should be a reason for you to change the culture. Or if you want to make a change in the organization, you should have a strong reason of why you should change the organization. So the reasons can be many. One is mostly, it is always that the company is in a dire state of existence and it's probably going to not exist anymore. So then, because growth is not happening or profits are not happening, so then you need something to happen such that the change happens and a different, direction it has to take. But while I say that, I want to talk about the negatives of this. Negatives of leaders changing and constantly wanting to change something in the organization, which is not a good thing also. I think some companies have this problem where there's one leader who's there for 3 years, the person leaves and another person comes in, and that person is there only for another 3 years. And then another person comes in and another person is there only for 3 years. And this happens many times in many multinational companies where the tenure given to the people is only 3 years. So each person, when they come in, they want to achieve something for their own personal benefit. And when that happens, you find that finally the organization is not benefiting at all. So whereas when you look at owner-driven companies, you find that even if this change happens, the culture is maintained continuously, and there's nobody, the owners don't allow that culture or the organization change to happen for the sake of it. So therefore, they tend to survive a lot more. And India is a classical example of how owner-driven companies, especially South India, is a classical example of how owner-driven companies have lived through many generations as an organization. That's because they kept the core values of those organizations and the core attitude of those organizations very close, such that it allows it to survive. But you've seen many companies, General Motors is a classical example. Such a large organization has lived in for many, many years, but you've seen leaders just come in and go, and each one comes and makes a particular change in the organization, and the purpose is not very clear. And the next person who comes in wants to be only one up or one down, and the organization is the one that takes the beating. But there are large organizations which are very good also, done very well over many years also they've done. So I don't think there's one answer that would fit all of this very well. The point I want to say is practicality is very, very important. Theory is there, excellent theories are there, and every one of them are right. Amongst the many theories, as a leader, you need to choose what is a theory that will be helpful for this organization at this particular time, at this particular hour.
Yes. Correct.
And that needs to be adopted by the leader to achieve the objective that you set yourself for.
Yeah, we'll ask one last question, ma'am. Anyone would like to ask, or I will ask? All right, I'll go. See, you talked about when the change has to happen, many times the person has to come from outside. Then the change normally happens a little more smoothly because he brings the kind of force and energy to bring that change. But have you had experience where the change had happened and you got the wrong person?
Yeah, I've seen that. I wouldn't want to name the companies, but yeah, I've seen where leaders just came in and they went, and eventually that didn't do good for the company. I've seen that happen, and in those cases, I think the objectives were not very clear with the leader in mind. The person who was trying to make a change was not probably very clear on why the change needs to happen. And sometimes they leave it as status quo, or sometimes they just want to do it for their own personal benefit. And in those cases, you find that it doesn't help the organization. So if a leader normally understands what is the requirement of the organization at that particular hour, and look at the various theories that is there, and then adopt the right one to make a difference, normally you'll see them successful. If their purpose is very clear, they're normally successful. If the purpose is not clear in the leader's mind, then it's not good. And I've seen some companies go down just because the leader was not the right leader. Yeah, I don't want to name them because I can't take examples, but I've seen many, or a few at least, right in front of my own eyes, going down because the leader chosen was not right. And what happens sometimes is when the leader chosen is not right, and the next leader is also not right, the third leader is also not right, you've lost about 9 years. Imagine each person stayed for 3 years. You've lost about 9 years. And then the industry has moved on. Things have changed. The environment has completely changed. And for that organization to catch up that 9 years, any new leader comes in will find it extremely difficult to change. And one other thing, when I'm talking about leaders, I don't want this overemphasis in the minds of people that the leader can break or make an organization, because I don't strongly believe only one leader can do it. Yeah, the leader has a very strong influencing factor for it. I agree completely, but not necessarily it's the leader who does it. For example, in my own particular organization, I had the leader who came in and made a big difference here. The leader tell me, I was able to make this difference because there was a lot of money spent in this company, and a lot of equipment and extra capacity is there. All I have to do is to make sure I utilize all those equipments and make sure we deliver the growth. So he had a base. He had a base of a capacity which was underutilized. So he understood the objectives and he was just only wanting to make the capacity utilized better. But what if the capacity was not there, right? He may not, so he credited the work of the previous leaders who had created that capacity, which in his regime, he was able to utilize that. So it's just that not one person who does it, or just it's not one action that somebody did, you get the result. For example, right now, I may be a leader, I'm trying to do 3 or 4 products. Before I retire, probably I won't see the light of those products, but the work I've done, if the next person comes in and they take it off, you can't say that, they were the visionary. No, there was a lot of groundwork done by the other person also. So it's like one Nobel Prize winner in his speech, he said, I'm the lucky one to have got this Nobel Prize.
Yes,
But
Daniel Kahneman.
Yep, I thank the million others who made it possible for me to make this invention. So you should not, as a leader, think that the leader is end all and be all. And I don't want today's young children, when they come in, especially from India, they all come in with an attitude that I have to become the CEO of a particular company. I mean, if I'm anything less than that, I'm nobody. So that is, especially many MBA students have that in their mind. And I just want to pour cold water into them and say, no, you are not the only person who can make a difference. You have to be respectful of all the work the rest of the people have done for you to be successful. And only when you have that humility within you can you be very successful.
That's true. That's true. That's true. But one last thing, one comment. But the reverse is possible, isn't it? One leader can destroy it.
Of course, of course, of course. The leader can destroy it because the leader, my view is, the leader thinks he or she is the end all and be all. When you have that attitude as a leader, then your decisions it's a high risk game. You can be extremely successful or you can be extremely down.
High risk game, yes. Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
And she has conveyed a very important message for all the students who are listening to this session. Actually, it is like what she said. It is the team effort, the group effort, for which you have to acknowledge the work what has gone into a team, so that you are successful at this stage. Excellent, ma'am. Hats off to you.
Thank you. So did we retain you at office till 8:30?
No, today I had a lot of meetings continuously till about 6:30. So I just thought I might as well stay on. And in fact, I had someone who was in my office till 7:30. So I kept myself busy till then.
Yes.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for spending your time with us.
I just hope that I was of some value to you.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's immense value. Thank you so much, Gauri. So kind of you to spend
Thank
this
you.
time.
It is a pleasure being
Thank
here.
you. Bye. Thank you.
Good luck with your book.
Thank you.
you.
Thank you.
And I just only hope that all your efforts serve as good pointers for the young children who are coming in, and they make a difference to India, to the world.
Thank you. Thank you, Gauri.